France and Saudi Arabia confirmed that they support a political solution to the conflict in Yemen. The Yemeni government says that there are positive indicators to renew the United Nations agreed truce. People of Taiz continue to suffer under Houthi siege and face dire humanitarian situation. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. This is the English news with me, Roshan Fouad. A joint Saudi-French statement stressed the need to support efforts for a peaceful solution in Yemen. The statement also touched on the importance of resolving international disputes by diplomatic and peaceful means. The French side praised the kingdom's efforts in support for the truce in Yemen and the kingdom's appreciation for France's support for UN efforts to reach a comprehensive political solution. The Yemeni government said that there are positive indications that the United Nations agreed truce would be extended. This shows the government commitment to ending the conflict and achieving peace in the country. The following report gives more details.
A senior Yemeni official expressed optimism for the renewal of the UN truce in light of active regional and international efforts. The Yemeni official spoke following visits to the region by UN envoy Hans Grunberg and US envoy Tim Lunderking, who were hoping to extend the truce that was established on April 2nd and encourage the Houthis to open Taiz crossings and other locations. The official, who spoke on condition of anonymity, stated that signs were favorable for extending the truce, but declined to provide any specifics or say whether the truce would be extended for 2 months or 6 months. Discussions are ongoing. There is undoubtedly international pressure, but the government insists that the Houthis fulfill their commitments to open roads in Taiz and the rest of the provinces. This is a humanitarian issue, and it will not be overlooked, the official underlined. The UN envoy to Yemen visited the interim capital of Aden during the previous 2 days, but he was unable to meet with the president and other members of the Presidential Leadership Council. According to Yemeni sources, he spoke with Foreign Minister Ahmed bin Mubarak, who relayed the government's position. In his proposal to extend the ceasefire for another 6 months, Grunberg pledged to work on 2 fronts at once, finishing the opening of Taiz's roads and concentrating on the economic side of things. Tim Lunderking, the US envoy to Yemen, emphasized that the Yemeni government has demonstrated a strong commitment to managing the truce, and that the parties must react to the request for an extension. Yemeni parties have criticized the Houthis for escalating military operations on various fronts, as regional and international attempts to prolong the ceasefire and begin extensive political dialogue multiply. Despite the suffering of Yemenis and their desire for peace, the terrorist group continues to mobilize additional forces and weapons on numerous fronts, according to a military source. As the truce comes to an end, the insider noted that the frequency of breaches and attacks has been sharply rising.
A new batch of U.S. military forces has entered Al Mahra to establish control over oil reserves. Local sources reported that the American troops landed at Al Ghaida airport from Rayyan International Airport in Mukalla. The sources stated that the arrival of the U.S. forces was followed by a major disruption to internal connectivity in Sayhut district. An economic studies center confirmed that the continuation of the conflict in Yemen is leading the country to a real famine. At the same time, the United Nations Population Fund indicated that women and girls are the most affected by the humanitarian crisis in the country. The report also revealed the size of the gap between the exchange rate of the rial against the dollar and the prices of basic commodities in areas controlled by the Houthi militia. People in Taiz continue to suffer under Houthi blockade that has entered its 6th year. What makes things worse is the announcement of aid agencies that they were forced to suspend major programs in Yemen in order to tough a funding crisis. This report gives more details.
The war has forced this family to flee from death in Harat to Sana'a, and now they are settled in these tents in Taiz. Ala Muhammad lost her husband, leaving her behind with 8 children, facing a life of displacement and starvation. These tents do not protect them from summer heat nor the winter cold, and it lacks the minimum requirements such as having a kitchen or even a toilet, and their daily suffering does not stop.
I got displaced from Harath to Sana'a and now I'm settled in Taiz. I live in this tent with my 8 children. When it rains, our tents flood and we have no bathrooms or food. We have nothing.
Most of the population of Taz depends on the humanitarian aid provided by the World Food Programme, but the delay in distributing food aid and reducing its sites to half the ration has made many families live in a difficult living situation amid the lack of job opportunities and sources of income.
We waited 3 months to receive our aid, and now they said it's going to be 40 kilos, but nothing happened, and this will lead to famine.
Observers confirm that stopping the humanitarian aid that the majority of families receive from the World Food Programme under the tragic conditions imposed by the war will lead to difficult living effects and famine.
The World Food Programme doesn't give us the aid late. They reduced it more than the half in all governorates, including Thais. Reducing food aids will lead to a catastrophe to all citizens who completely depend on aid for food.
Food aid remains a humanitarian entitlement that must be taken into consideration in Yemen amid the war and the unsettled political and economic situation.
Amnesty International organization called on the release of the detained journalist Tawfiq al-Mansouri. The organization revealed that the detained journalist was deprived of urgent health care, despite suffering from serious health conditions. They added the journalist should never have been detained in the first place, and authorities must grant him access to the health care. The Houthi militia committed murder against a citizen of Al-Jarrahi district. Local sources said that the citizen was killed while he was on his way to perform Friday prayers, and he was shot directly with 30 bullets. The sources added they took him to the hospital, but he arrived as a dead body while his father is still in a complete coma. The Houthi militia surrounded a small village in Al-Mahwid Governorate. This surrounding has led to killing, wounding, and arresting a number of villagers. This came in a Houthi attempt to subdue anti-Houthi tribes. The Houthi militia launched repeated air attacks towards military sites near the lines of Hais district. The military media of the joint forces reported that the militia fired 8 missiles from drones towards military sites of Magbana. They added the air defenses of the joint forces prevented the Houthi militia from flying over the targeted sites. Yemen's honey is well known globally. Different types of honey are produced and sold locally and internationally. Yet the war has affected this industry like any other thing in the country. Beekeepers now lack important logistics which help them produce honey. The following report gives more details.
Yemeni beekeeping dates back at least to the beginning of the first millennium BC. For decades, beekeeping has been an essential part of Yemen's economic life. But thousands of beekeepers are fighting to survive as a result of years of violence and climate change. According to the International Committee of the Red Cross, experts consider Yemeni honey to be among the best in the world, but massive losses in the production have happened since the war began in 2014. The buzz in the family hives has died due to years of war and climate change, which once made honey a productive industry. The bees are being hit by a strange phenomena, and it's either due to climate change or the effects of war. Since 2014, Yemen, one of the most impoverished nations in the world, has been in a bloody conflict. Over the previous 8 years, there have been hundreds of thousands of deaths from fighting, disease, and famine, and the infrastructure of the nation has also been completely destroyed. Yemeni honey, specifically the royal sidr, is regarded by experts as some of the best in the world. According to the United Nations, honey is critical to Yemen's economy, with 100,000 households relying on it for a living. However, the industry has suffered many losses since the outbreak of the conflict. According to the ICRC, armed conflict and climate change are endangering the continuation of a 3,000-year-old practice. Numerous beekeepers are being forced into precatory, which has a considerable influence on productivity as a result of waves of displacement caused by fleeing violence, the contamination of productive areas by weapons, and escalating climate change effects. The conflict had limited the ability of beekeepers to freely roam the land whenever flowers were in bloom to collect the honey. In addition, landmines and unexploded ordnance pose a serious danger to all Yemenis, with over 1 million landmines and explosive devices spread around the country, killing and injuring civilians on a daily basis. Being a beekeeper in a high-violence location increases the danger of being attacked by warring parties when grazing bees near active front lines. This situation has driven thousands of beekeepers to abandon the honey industry for the sake of surviving. What makes things worse is that Yemen is extremely affected by climate change, as temperature increases in recent years along with severe environmental changes are disrupting the bees' ecology, affecting pollination. Finally, the ICRC is giving financial assistance and training to beekeepers this year, following a similar operation in 2021 that assisted approximately 4,000 of them.
Coming next. The United Nations says that fuel imports through Hodeidah port have increased during the truce.
قذيفة يعني جاءت مفاجئة وكالعادة الأطفال يخرجوا يلعبوا ساعة كل يوم.
للأسف تم إبلاغنا بوفاة أحد الأطفال صباح اليوم نتيجة تفاقم حالته الصحية ودخوله في مضاعفات، فيما بقية الأطفال منهم لا زال تحت العلاج ومنهم من لا زال تحت الملاحظة.
في ظل هذه الهدنة يعني احنا الجوال كالعادة يخرجوا آمنين، هدنة ما في أي حاجة. سمعت القذيفة خرجت يعني كالمجنون أجري.
بعض الأطفال أصيبوا بشظايا في البطن، بعضهم في الرأس، بعضهم في الأطراف السفلية. حقيقة نحن نبذل مع المستشفى بحيث لا يتعرض هذول الأطفال إلى إعاقات دائمة قد تؤثر على حياتهم وتسبب لهم إعاقات مستقبلا.
Welcome back. Since the announcement of the UN agreed truce, restrictions on Hodeidah port have been lifted and more fuel entered into the city. This has facilitated movement of goods among cities and ensured delivery of food commodities to war-affected people. This report has more on this.
According to a World Food Programme study on Yemen's food security, fuel imports through the Hodeidah port, which is controlled by the Houthi militia, increased considerably compared to the same period last year. The Yemeni government recently announced that the cost of petroleum imports increased by $2 billion in the first half of the year, compared to the previous year. Due to a food crisis caused by the situation in Ukraine, the government underlined the importance of increasing food aid to millions of Yemenis. Yemen's current level of famine is unprecedented, causing enormous suffering for millions of people. Despite ongoing humanitarian assistance, millions of Yemenis remained food insecure, and the number of people facing food insecurity is likely to climb by the end of the year. 17.4 million Yemenis are facing severe food shortages, with 31,000 living in famine-like circumstances. By the end of 2022, severe food insecurity is expected to reach 19 million people, with 161,000 people enduring famine-like conditions. Due to budget constraints, the World Food Programme targeted 8 million individuals with reduced rations in each distribution cycle as of January 2022, while 5 million people residing in regions of highest concern were targeted for full rations. During January to March, the monthly average cost of the minimum food basket grew by 25%, hitting an all-time high in March 2022. It is alarming that households must now pay twice as much to sustain the same level of food consumption that they battled to maintain in 2021. However, it is not simply food that is seeing record highs. Fuel prices at petrol stations and on the black markets hit an all-time high in the first quarter of 2022. In regions under government control, the pump price of fuel and diesel climbed by 78% and 90% respectively, compared to the fourth quarter of 2021, while those under Houthi authority witnessed rises of 20 and 43% respectively. The ceasefire between the Houthis and the Saudi-backed Yemeni government, established in April and extended for 2 months in June, represents the longest period of peace since the conflict began in late 2014.
And I'm here to talk about a very important issue regarding a potential disaster looming in Yemen, which will not only affect us Yemenis, but the region as a whole. Because of the war in Yemen, a huge offloading oil tanker called FSO Safir was left unmaintained since 2015. And it's probably now the biggest ticking bomb in the world, with more than 1.1 million barrels of oil waiting to explode in the Red Sea off of the coast of Yemen any time. An oil spill with this magnitude, which could be 4 times bigger than the Exxon Valdez oil spill, will not only affect Yemeni coast and the closure of the Hudaydah seaport, which is the main seaport for international assistance to Yemen, it could also disrupt international trade in the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, one of the busiest straits in the world.
King Salman Humanitarian Aid and Relief Center signed an agreement in order to implement a project to support education in Yemen. The agreement was signed by the center's Assistant Supervisor General for Operations and Programs, Engineer Ahmed Ben Ali. As per the agreement, school uniforms and bags will be provided for 11,586 Yemeni children, as well as the rehabilitation and improvement of the infrastructure for 23 schools in Hadramaut, El Mahra, Aden, and Hajjah governorates. The war has destroyed health facilities in Abyan governorate. One facility was restored after years of halt. Many people from Abyan governorate and other neighboring areas come to seek medication in this facility. This report has more on this.
After a long struggle with traveling and searching for treatment, Salim, a citizen of Sheikh Salim area in Abyan Governorate, was pleased with the opening of the health unit in his area, as well as his happiness to benefit from its health services, like other beneficiaries.
We were suffering a lot as we don't have any health facilities. The local authorities have established a building for healthcare. However, it was void of any equipment. If we have a patient, we would have taken him to a far place in Abyan Governorate.
This health facility is one of the health services affiliated with the Sheikh Salim area, and like other facilities, it was subjected to destruction as a result of the war that the region witnessed for nearly 5 years.
هذه الوحدة الذي بيستفيد منها أكثر من 800 نسمة.
Around 800 people are benefiting from this unit who are living in Sheikh Salim area and other areas too. Abu Bakr Hussein Salim has established this place, who is the pioneer of development in Abyan Governorate.
Alleviating the suffering of citizens and initiating the provision of health services to them on an ongoing basis is what those in charge of this health facility seek. After providing it with medical devices, health materials, and various medicines, in addition to distinguished health staff, providing the best health services to citizens and striving towards achieving an integrated health system is what the citizen aspires to, especially after years that have exhausted them and exacerbated their suffering in moving and searching for health services amid dire economic conditions. And that is what urged those who are in charge of this facility to facilitate citizens' procedures and help them receive treatment in accordance with the available capabilities.
Here is a reminder of the main headlines. France and Saudi Arabia confirmed that they support a political solution to the conflict in Yemen. The Yemeni government says that there are positive indicators to renew the United Nations agreed truce. People of Taiz continue to suffer under Houthi siege and face dire humanitarian situation. This is the end of the news. It was Roshan Fouad. See you soon.